Sometimes, the beginning of a night can feel perfectly normal, but later you realize that the smallest detail can completely change everything. That's how my night began, anyway. It was a Friday, and I'd had one of those terrible days. Nothing went right. So, my friends and I decided to hit up a bar in the city center, hoping to unwind. The place was busy, filled with people laughing, chatting, and the soft hum of music in the background. Everything seemed fine. I ordered my drink, hoping it would take the edge off. But looking back now, I realized that the thing that would terrify me most came from something so simple. I almost didn't notice it. The bar was packed. People were enjoying themselves, and the noise was almost comforting in a way. After a while, the waiter brought over our drinks. He placed them down on the table quickly, and I saw that there was a napkin tucked under my glass. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but something about the way it was positioned under the glass caught my attention. The waiter didn't seem to notice it, and at that moment, I shrugged it off as nothing until I unfolded the napkin. When I looked at it, my stomach dropped. It was a handwritten note. The handwriting was shaky, as if it had been written in a hurry, and definitely not in a calm, measured way. The words were simple, but they hit me like a punch to the gut. "Get out of here, they're watching you." I froze. My heart raced, and I felt this cold wave of unease spread through me. My mind spun. Who had written this? Why? I looked around the room, trying to remain calm. Everything appeared normal. People were laughing, chatting, completely unaware of what was going on in my head. But then, my eyes found the waiter. He was standing across the room, his gaze fixed on me. And it wasn't the usual polite look a waiter gives, it was something deeper. There was concern in his eyes. It wasn't obvious, but it was there, lingering. His stare felt like it was directed right at me, like he knew something I didn't. Like he was waiting for something to happen. The worry in his eyes. It made my blood run cold. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just a prank. But the words from the note, "They're watching you," echoed in my mind over and over. I started to feel off, like there was something lurking in the air, something unseen. I glanced around at the crowd again. No one seemed to be paying attention to me, but the weight of the moment pressed down on me. Why did the waiter look at me like that? And what did that note mean? My hands were trembling as I stuffed the napkin into my pocket, trying to appear calm. I couldn't bring myself to say anything to the waiter, but I didn't want to stay there either. My nerves were shot, and I quickly asked for the check. The waiter hesitated just a fraction longer than necessary, pulling out the bill and handing it to me with a look that seemed to say everything without uttering a word. His eyes held a mixture of fear and warning, like he knew something was wrong, but he couldn't or wouldn't say anything. It sent a chill down my spine. I paid quickly, not making eye contact, and my hands felt like they were going to shake the money out of my grasp. I was so anxious, my breath was shallow, and the thought of leaving felt like the only option. But as I picked up my glass, I realized it was empty. I hadn't even noticed finishing it, but the idea of staying any longer felt unbearable. I stood up abruptly, trying not to show how unsettled I was. I wanted to leave. I needed to leave. As I walked toward the door, I could feel the weight of the waiter's gaze still following me. It lingered, that look, like it was attached to me. His eyes, there was something about them that I couldn't shake, but I didn't want to look back. I didn't want to know why he was looking at me that way. The instant I stepped outside into the cool night air, I took a deep breath, hoping to calm myself, but it didn't help. The words from the note, "They're watching you," kept echoing in my head. Who was watching me? Was it the waiter? Was it someone else in the bar? I didn't know. All I knew was that I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, something, was following me. I tried to brush it off as paranoia, but it wouldn't go away. The streets were dark, and every shadow seemed to stretch a little too far. Every flickering streetlight felt too deliberate. I kept checking over my shoulder, feeling like someone was behind me, just out of view. But when I looked, there was no one. The sensation never went away. It was like a presence I couldn't see, but could always feel. That feeling stayed with me as I walked home, the napkin crumpled in my pocket like a curse I couldn't escape. With every step, I felt like I was being watched. My mind raced, and I couldn't shake the image of the waiter's concerned look, nor the haunting message. Was someone following me? The idea that I was being watched consumed me. I couldn't shake the dread in my stomach, the thought that I wasn't alone, that something was waiting for me in the dark. When I finally reached home, I thought I'd be safe. But even as I closed the door behind me, the feeling didn't leave. That night, I tried to sleep, but it was impossible. I kept hearing things. A creak from upstairs, a faint tapping at the window. It felt like someone was moving around in the shadows. It was as though the message from the napkin had planted a seed of fear that wouldn't stop growing. And that seed was becoming something real, something I couldn't escape. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there, wide awake, staring at the dark corners of my room. Every sound made my heart race. The shadow at the edge of my vision. The feeling of someone just behind me. I could almost hear breathing, but when I turned, there was nothing there. Even now, I can't shake it. I still feel like I'm being watched. Every time I go out, every time I look around, I wonder if I'll see someone lurking in the shadows. I wonder if the waiter's warning was just the beginning, but I'll never know for sure. All I know is that the fear never left me. Something, someone is watching, and it's getting closer. That night, I decided I needed some time alone. I wasn't feeling up to a big night out, but I wanted a change of pace. So, I walked into my usual bar in the city. It was familiar, comforting, just what I thought I needed. I sat down at a small table by the window, ordered a drink, and took my first sip. It felt like it could be a quiet night, a chance to clear my head. But from the moment I walked in, something didn't sit right. It wasn't overwhelming, just a quiet feeling in the back of my mind. Like I was being watched, nothing too unsettling, but enough to grab my attention. The table next to me was occupied by a group of people. They seemed friendly enough, and they tried to strike up a conversation a few times. At first, it felt completely normal, like small talk between strangers. But then, as the minutes ticked by, I noticed that they were getting a little too close. One of them, a guy named Mark, kept winking at me and smiling in a way that felt off. My instincts told me to be cautious, but I pushed the feeling aside. I told myself I was just overthinking it. After all, I was just here for a drink and some peace and quiet. I got up to use the bathroom. It was the kind of thing I had been needing to do for a while. I placed my drink back on the table, made my way across the room, and went into the restroom. A few minutes later, I returned. That's when it hit me. Something was off. My drink had been moved slightly from its original position. It wasn't much, just enough that I noticed. For a brief moment, I felt a surge of panic. Did someone move my drink? But I quickly brushed it off. It's nothing. My imagination, that's all. Or so I thought. I picked up my glass and took another sip. And that's when the strange sensation hit me. It started out slow, creeping in like a cold wave, but it soon grew undeniable. Something was wrong. The drink tasted sweeter than usual, too sweet, in fact. Something was off. And as the sweetness hit my tongue, my heart began to race. My head started spinning, and my vision blurred. It wasn't just the drink, it was like my entire body was shutting down. My muscles began to feel weak, like they couldn't hold me up anymore. The noise around me grew distant. People were still talking, laughing, but their voices sounded muffled, as if they were coming from a faraway place. The world felt softer, as if it was slipping away. My hands trembled, and I struggled to keep my feet grounded. My thoughts scattered, and I felt the edges of panic creeping in. It wasn't just the drink, it was something else. Someone had set a trap for me, and I had walked right into it. I glanced over at the group next to me. Mark's eyes were on me, watching me with that unsettling smile. His face didn't look quite right now. There was something in his eyes, something I couldn't quite place, but it made me shudder. As I stared back at him, my body started trembling uncontrollably. That smile, it was too much. It felt like it was more than just a smile. It felt like a warning. Then, everything went dark. I don't know how long I was out of it, but when I came to, I could barely focus on what was happening. My vision was swimming, everything felt heavy. That's when I heard the waiter's voice beside me, full of panic. "You didn't just drink it. That drink, it's controlling you," he whispered urgently, his eyes wide with terror. Get out of here now." His words were trembling, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. I tried to focus on him, but it was like looking through a fog. With all my strength, I tried to stand, but my legs were like jelly. I couldn't focus on anything. My head felt like it was spinning, and my body wasn't responding. Every step I took felt like it might be my last. I had to get out. I had to get away from that place. I stumbled toward the door, the world around me shifting in and out of focus. When I finally made it outside, the cold night air hit my face like a slap, but it didn't help clear my mind. It didn't stop the panic rising in my chest. As I stepped out onto the street, the world seemed even quieter. The city, usually so alive, felt dead empty, and then, in the silence, I heard it. A whisper. It was faint, but it felt like it was coming from just behind me. My heart skipped a beat. I turned round quickly, but there was no one there. Yet, the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. Someone or something was following me. My steps were slow, hesitant, as if my body wasn't fully in control anymore. I tried to look around, but every shadow seemed to hold something, someone, waiting for me. And then, just as I thought I saw a figure in the distance, a silhouette moving closer, I felt the weight of fear take over me. I spun around, but the figure was gone in an instant. It was as if it had never been there. I tried to steady myself, but the fear had already gripped me. Then, a voice echoed in my mind, cold and unrelenting. "You'll be like us." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My whole body shuddered. I turned, and there he was. Mark, but he was different. There was something wrong with his eyes. His gaze was hollow, empty, like there was nothing human left in him. And in his hand, he held a bottle. I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry, my mouth unable to form the words. My body refused to move, paralyzed by terror. The figure before me wasn't the same man I had seen earlier. He was something else now, something darker. As Mark took a step closer, I could see his smile. That smile was still there, but it wasn't the same. It was twisted, unnatural. And then the voice came again, inside my head. "Next time, we'll be with you." I couldn't understand what was happening, but it didn't matter anymore. Fear had completely consumed me. Mark was close now, his dark eyes burning into mine. That smile, it was the end. That night, I found myself sitting alone at a bar. I had just left work, feeling like I needed to escape the noise and pressure of the day. The city seemed to offer the perfect kind of solitude I was craving. I needed space, just a little peace, and a drink to unwind. Nothing extravagant, just something simple, ordinary. But as I sat there nursing my drink, a man appeared beside me. At first, I was a little thrown off. It was unusual to have someone approach me like this, especially in a place so quiet. But sometimes, it's nice to talk to a stranger, right? I figured I could use the company. His name was Leo, and within minutes, we fell into conversation. It felt easy, natural. We talked about the city, the places we'd been, the memories we shared of the streets, and the people we encountered. This wasn't just some random bar. The atmosphere had a sort of eerie charm to it. The dim lights, the low hum of music in the background, the faint scent of smoke lingering in the air. It was one of those places where people sometimes forget who they are, where they come from. As the night went on, I realized Leo had this peculiar way of drawing me in, making me feel like I'd known him longer than just a few minutes. But as time passed, something started to shift in the air. It wasn't a big change, just a subtle shift, like the room wasn't quite as welcoming anymore. It was as if I was starting to feel a little off. After a while, Leo said he was going to the restroom. "I'll be right back," he told me with that smile. And as he walked off toward the back of the bar, I went back to my drink, not really thinking much of it. I sat there, scanning the room, wondering if anyone else would strike up a conversation. But everyone seemed to be lost in their own worlds, their own bubbles of conversation. Minutes passed, then more minutes. But Leo still hadn't come back. I glanced at my phone, checking the time. It felt like it had been longer than it should have. I ordered another drink, trying to distract myself, but something kept nagging at me. How long has it been since he went to the restroom? I couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. Had it been a minute? 10? I wasn't sure anymore. So, I glanced up at the bartender. "Did you see a guy go to the restroom?" I asked, trying to sound casual. But the bartender just stared at me blankly for a moment before responding, "You came here alone." The words hit me strangely. What did he mean? I was momentarily speechless, but that didn't even compare to how I felt when I turned around. It was like a chill ran through my spine. The air felt too still, too thick. That's when I realized it. Leo hadn't just gone to the restroom. There was an emptiness, a strange absence in the air, something that made the world around me feel suddenly distorted. My mind started racing, scrambling to make sense of it. I stood up quickly, my heart pounding. I had to find Leo. Something was wrong. Something was so deeply wrong. I walked toward the restroom, my legs shaky, my breath short. The atmosphere was suffocating, like the very air in the bar was closing in on me. I reached the restroom door and forced it open. Inside, it was empty. No sign of Leo, just a faint smell of something stale, the sound of a few pipes creaking somewhere. No footsteps, no noise. The room was hollow. I stood there for a moment, feeling like the walls were closing in on me. It was like I had stumbled into some kind of limbo. A voice inside me screamed to leave. "Leave now," it whispered, an urgency that made my skin crawl. But I couldn't bring myself to move. I felt paralyzed. There was nothing here, nothing I could see, but it felt like someone was missing. I hurried back to my seat at the bar, looking for the bartender, but when I turned around, everyone was gone. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. The chairs around me were empty, the music had stopped, and only the faint hum of broken lights remained. It was unsettling. The emptiness in that room was suffocating. It felt like I was the only one left in a place that had never existed. I took a shaky breath, trying to gather my thoughts. I had just been talking to Leo just a moment ago, and now it felt like he had never been there at all. It was like the whole night had slipped through my fingers, leaving nothing but a feeling of dread. For a split second, I felt like I had wandered into the wrong reality, like I had somehow gotten lost. I walked outside, hoping the cold air would help clear my head. The city was quiet, eerily quiet. The bar was behind me now, and the people I had seen just moments ago had all disappeared. Only empty chairs and flickering lights remained. My footsteps echoed in the silence, but even that sound felt off, wrong. As I turned to look back at the bar one last time, I saw something on the ground, a piece of paper. I bent down, picked it up, and read the words scrawled on it. "Someone who won't return, be careful." My heart skipped a beat. I rubbed my eyes, but when I looked again, the paper was still there, the words still clear. My head was spinning. What had happened? What had I just witnessed? The ringing in my ears grew louder. Without thinking, I shoved the paper into my pocket and started walking faster. The streets felt colder now, and I could still hear that silence behind me, the stillness pressing in from every direction. The faces, the stares, none of it would leave my mind. I had no idea what had just happened, but I knew one thing for sure. I would never forget that night,